Hello, faithful, and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis. And today we're going to be recapping the 49ers 30-13 victory over the New England Patriots. We'll be going over some Pro Football Focus stats and rankings on offense and defense. We'll discuss how the defense got aggressive against New England, the offense staying efficient but getting a bit greedy at times. Special teams, once again, an issue. We're going to be transitioning and talking about Christian McCaffrey apparently having tendonitis in both of his Achilles tendons. We're going to be discussing injuries as they stand as of Tuesday as I'm recording this, and then preview San Francisco hosting the Arizona Cardinals next Sunday at 4:05 Eastern. No plus content again this week. It's going to be all 49ers all the time, so let's get right into it. And it was the kind of showing against New England that I think we were hoping for. Not perfect, not 100% perfect, but a 30-13 victory over New England means they covered the spread, means that I was awfully close on my prediction of 27-13. And for the most part, they had this game in hand from the jump. We're going to be talking about the first two drives, how they weren't exactly what we were all hoping for offensively. Defensively, the Niners, though, did turn it on, albeit against a wildly offensively challenged team in New England. Now, the overall stats, let's touch upon them. Yards, 431 to 216 in favor of San Francisco, basically doubled up the Patriots. Niners had the advantage in first downs, 19-12. Turnovers, Pats had 3, San Fran had 2. We'll be talking about that. And the Niners did have a 3-minute advantage in time of possession. Let's look at Pro Football Focus's top 5 ranked Niners on offense. 2 linemen leading the way, Dominic Puny and Trent Williams. Next, Juwan Jennings after another solid game. Colton McKivitz coming in 4th. So 3-0 linemen and George Kittle rounding out the top 5. The bottom 3 being Jacob Cowing, Isaac Guerendo, and tight end Eric Sauber. But hey, listen, Jacob Cowing saw 4 snaps, sadly ended up on the bottom 3 on offense per Pro Football Focus. On defense, no surprise who the top ranked or rated defensive player was. Fred Warner, then Nick Bosa, Sam Okiwanu in his first start after being permanently elevated to the active roster, Isaac Yiadom on just 16 snaps, and Diamador Lenore. Your bottom 3, linebacker Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, Malik Collins, bit of a surprise, thought he had a pretty disruptive game, and linebacker DeAndre Campbell. So let's stay there talking about the defense. Now, this was a team going into the game that was near the bottom of the league in blitz percentage. 14% of dropbacks resulted in a 49er blitz, which was actually up from about 6.5% after the Viking game. And that coincided with Kyle Shanahan saying that they need to schematically look at the defense now that Javon Hargrave is out, even though when he was in, the front 4 was not getting the rush that Kyle and Nick Sorensen hoped that they would generate, the type of pressure on the quarterback that they would generate, but that definitely changed this past Sunday against New England. Again, a bad team overall and a really bad team offensively. But going from a 14% blitz rate to 33%, 1 of every 3 dropbacks, Jacoby Brissett was pressured, and it resulted in 6 sacks, 2.5 to defensive tackle Kevin Givens. Great for him. That was a career day. 1.5 for Malik Collins. 1 for Evan Anderson, elevated from the practice squad, the rookie free agent out of Florida Atlantic, and 1 for Nick Bosa. Pressures, and I don't have everybody's pressures listed, but the top 5, Bosa with 7 pressures, Leonard Floyd with 6, Kevin Givens with 4, Malik Collins with 4, and Sam Okiwanu with 3. So it wasn't just the pressures getting to Brissett and disrupting at least the passing game. Overall, the Niners defense pretty much clamped down on anything New England wanted to do. That was the hope that a lot of us fans and Kyle and John and Nick had going into the game, knowing how offensively challenged New England was, even though San Francisco, the first 3 games, did not put on film what the hope was that they would become defensively. And maybe this was a game, it's certainly a step in the right direction. Let's not take more out of it than we need to, but maybe this is the springboard that the Niners defense needed from a production standpoint, but also a confidence standpoint to round back into a top 5 unit that many of us predicted that they would be. Overall, they held to New England to 3.5 yards per play. You want to compare that? San Francisco was at a little over 7 yards per play. And the pressures and the sacks and controlling the run game, because we knew, the Niners defense knew, and the Patriots offense knew, they wanted to go into the game and control the game on the ground. And they thought that given where San Francisco was ranked defensively, difficulty stopping the run, that the Patriots would have some sort of modicum of success. And they didn't. Overall, the Patriots ran the ball 24 times for 73 yards. That's basically 3 yards a carry. They did have some decent runs by Ramondre Stevenson when he was left in there and not pulled after putting the ball on the ground during their second drive. Antonio Gibson, even Jermichael Hasty had a good run or two. But as a whole, 3 yards per carry, 73 yards, basically half of what they averaged per game the first 3 weeks of the season. And even third downs improved. I mean, this was an improvement across the board. And while it shouldn't feel as impressive, or we shouldn't be as pleased as maybe, a lot of us are, this is the performance that they needed. They only won by 17. We'll say only, they still covered the spread. It was still a comfortable game throughout as the Niners got up 20-0 into the second quarter. But defensively, you saw the improvements everywhere, right? Pass defense, run defense, we just talked about, 73 yards on the ground, pressures, 6 sacks, and third downs where they were averaging 50, allowing teams to convert 53% of the time. They held the Patriots 5 out of 16 third down conversions. That's 31% on the day. The Patriots did go for it 3 times on 4th down and got it once. So a 33% clip there. Defensively, it started with Fred Warner, and he wasn't able to finish the game with an ankle sprain, but winds up getting a pick 6 on the Patriots, I believe their third possession, with the Niners up 6-0. So late into the first quarter, early second, whenever that pick was, Fred Warner had as many points as the 49ers offense. Great diving back across his body, picks it off, lands, gets back up, gets a couple really nice blocks from Nick Bosa and Malik Mustafa, to name a few, and takes it into the end zone where he admits he was gassed, but then again, he did dive and potentially landed on the ball or landed awkwardly, but got the 49ers to 13-0 before they tacked on another field goal to make it 20-0 and 20-3 at the half, with Joey Sly connecting on a long field goal. Jacoby Brissett, again, we talked about the total yards, 216 total, rushing was 74. If you don't count the sacks, which deduct from passing yards, Jacoby Brissett had a season high 168 yards, 1 touchdown, and that interception to Fred Warner. While you feel good about allowing only 216 yards, you knew what you were getting with the Patriots. I said in my previous podcast that would you be shocked that if this was the game where Jacoby goes more or over his previous high of 149 yards? No, because 149 yards isn't a lot. And the Niners defense as a whole, but specifically the pass defense, was struggling so much that you figured they would find ways to get Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry and their receivers involved. And Antonio Gibson had a big reception that set up one of their scores or one of their field goals. Plus, we all thought that New England would be playing from behind for the majority of the game, or at the very least, the majority of the second half. But They wound up being down 20-0 in the first quarter or in the second quarter, and that forced New England to alter their game plan somewhat. They still wound up getting 24 runs in, so it's not like they abandoned the run completely. But the Niners shut that down, and for the most part, if you could hold a team to under 200 yards passing, you're doing your job. It just so happened that this was Jacoby Brissett's best yardage output of the season. Now let's talk about defensive snaps. And I think two positions of note just because of the injuries and adjustments or substitutions that I think some of us as fans were hoping to see at defensive tackle with Javon Hargrave being out. And then Jordan Elliott getting hurt early in the game. Out of a possible 64 snaps, Malik Collins took 48. Kevin Givens had 35 snaps. Evan Anderson, elevated from the practice squad for this game, had 19, and Jordan Elliott with 14 before leaving with a knee injury, which is not too serious. Cornerbacks. So after the first 3 weeks, right, we were all wondering, is Isaac Yiadom the right guy to be the third cornerback outside in 3 wide sets, which would move Diamador Lenoir into the nickel? Green did get some playing time, and he outsnapped Isaac Yiadom. Out of 64 snaps, Ward and Lenoir played all 64. Renardo Green came in for 23. Isaac Yiadom had 16. And Kyle Shanahan, in his Monday press conference, said the plan was to get Green snaps in the second half. And he said it was nothing against, Ike, that Ike had a, really good first half. But when they got Green in there in the third quarter, they thought he played well enough that they rolled with him. Now, I don't know if that means Yiadom didn't get a snap at all in the second half. I'd have to go back and check that. But overall, Green with 7 more snaps than Isaac Yiadom. It's something that we can keep an eye on and monitor as we're watching the game on Sunday against Arizona to see how they alter or substitute or work this substitution between these two. Again, it's another game where Rocky Sin didn't get in at corner, and another game where Darrell Luter, who they were high on last year, second-year player, did not see the field. He was not active at all. So let's talk about offense a little bit. Offense stayed efficient. Purdy, 15 of 27 for 288 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. That pick brought his rating under 90. It was like 89.5 for the game. Not a great completion percentage, just over 50%. We were looking at 15 of 27, nearly 300 yards. But again, that pick to go along with that, really more of a better catch by Kittle than a good throw by Purdy in the corner of the end zone. Pushed the ball downfield. And this was not part of the game plan going in, but it was the looks that New England gave San Francisco. And apparently they gave similar looks 3 times when he wound up pushing the ball field down to Juwan Jennings on a perfect over-the-shoulder catch. Great coverage by the defender. Jennings makes the catch. Other pass to Debo. Debo runs a post. The safety bites on the in, leaves him with one-on-one coverage, gets behind the defender for a big game. And then Brock, by his own admission, got a little greedy on a deep post or a deep corner, had Ayuk earlier in the route, waited, and Jabril Prepper's safety drifted back and picked Purdy in the end zone, or San Francisco could have lengthened the lead even more. I would even argue that the touchdown to Kittle, and Kittle in the post-game interview, they were running an out and up from about the, inside the 15, around the 12-yard line. And he said, I thought that was an interesting play call. That's something that we run, from around the 40. Ran it closer, decent pass, better catch, but you can argue that was ill-advised. And I think that was one where Brock was kind of sliding to his left, throwing off his back foot, puts it just high enough that 3 defenders could not make a play on it. Kittle makes a great play, lands, throws his hands up immediately while he's on the ground. Like you knew it was a catch, and how excited he was, how he felt about going over 3 defenders for it, but somewhat ill-advised. Brock got lucky with that. I don't know if it would have been an interception, could have been knocked away. Brock got lucky, but he was feeling it. He was feeling confident in his playmakers. And someone like a Kittle or a Juwan, the taller of the receivers, more so than Ayuk and certainly Debo, that he wants to give them an opportunity to go up and over a defender. We saw it with Jennings last week at the Rams, which was a underthrown ball, but his receiver Jennings bailed him out. And here Kittle did the same to get 7 on the board. But it didn't start great, right? The red zone offense stalled the first 2 drives. And the 49ers red zone offense is the bottom third of the league through 4 weeks. And to come away with 6 against a team like New England, your first 2 drives is okay. Another team, a team like the Cardinals that has a little bit more punch offensively, or obviously against a higher caliber offense in the NFL, you always want to convert 7s to 3s. I mean, you want to come away with some points. If it's not 6, you get a touchdown and a field goal, make it 10. Obviously, 2 touchdowns is 14. You certainly don't want to throw the ball away, miss a field goal, do something careless, put the ball on the ground and come away with nothing. But against a team like New England, you can make that, we'll call it a mistake in air quotes, or you can have an executional inefficiency that leads to 6 instead of 10 and 14, and it's not going to hurt you too much. Running game, guys, Jordan Mason was the bell cow again. Wouldn't have gotten over 100 yards if it wasn't for that I believe it was a 25-yard run as they were salting the game away their very last drive. But he does go, it counts, right, as stats. He goes 24 for 123 and a touchdown. So that is a little over 5 yards a carry as a team, 32 for 148 and 1 score. But the running game, interestingly enough, on their first offensive drive, starts out with Kyle putting Debo as the lone running back and handing it to him. And this is a player coming off a calf strain. Now, listen, I get it. If someone's healthy enough to play, you don't maybe call anything different for that player within reason, right? Depending on what the ailment is. But a lower body injury, I mean, as a running back or receiver, he's running every play. Or maybe some plays he's not running. It's a sweep. He's blocking at the line or whatever it may be. But it just felt curious that, again, a running back or run call was made, and it should have been Jordan Mason. It wasn't Isaac Guerendo. It wasn't Patrick Taylor. It was Debo, and it was Debo coming off of an injury, for whatever that's worth. And Debo had that was one of 2 carries on the day for 14 yards. Isaac Guerendo, after a season-high 5 carries last week, only 1 carry this week against Arizona for 0 yards. Where's Patrick Taylor? He's active. They only have 3 running backs on the roster. They didn't elevate anybody. He's active. Why is he not getting carries? Patrick Taylor is a veteran, played in Green Bay's offense, similar terminology. The run game is built in a similar fashion to what San Francisco wants to do. Why is Patrick Taylor not getting any carries? And I know it's weird for anybody to call for a number 3 running back to get carries, but at some point this season, before McCaffrey comes back, and he's a good month away. I'm recording this on October 1st. He's not going to come back by any reports, which we all have to take with a grain of salt, until mid-November. So at least 4, if not 5 or 6 weeks away, which is really, I guess, 5 games because the bye week's in there. But you want to spell Mason. Now, Mason is clearly a better back than Guerendo and Patrick Taylor, or at least for this offense. He runs hard. But let's look at what New England did. And again, not a great offense. We're not going to look at what they did schematically, but let's look at least how they broke up the rushing attempts. Ramondre Stevenson led with 13, Antonio Gibson 6, and JaMychal Hasty with 3. Remember JaMychal Hasty? He was a former 49er. And it got them to 22 carries, and I think Jacoby Brissett had 2, which is what got them to 24 for 73 yards. And I'm not saying you need to have this specific split, but can we think of a time ever when San Francisco had 3 running backs touch the ball in a game? 3 running backs log at least 3 carries? I'd really have to, dig deep and do some research to figure it out. And watch, when I do the research, it's much more, it was much sooner than maybe I anticipated. But we know this season it's been Mason, then Debo, Grendo getting 5 carries only because Debo was out last week at the Rams. Debo gets 2 carries, Grendo gets 1. It is an inefficient use of your running back room. I mean, they're maximizing their touches with Mason, right? He's the second leading rusher in the NFL behind Derrick Henry. He's playing extremely well, but you have to wonder, as big and strong of a kid as he is, his body is not used to this his first 2 years in the league. And then you have to go back to Georgia Tech when he wasn't a lead back. I think he was a lead back, a ball carrier only 1 year, and it was early on in his Georgia Tech career. If there's a trust issue with Guerendo, then bring Patrick Taylor in. If you have issues, Kyle, with either one of those running backs, I believe Matt Breida is still available. You have a running back on your practice squad. I don't know how much you trust a running back on your practice squad, but he's there. And to see a team like New England, who is devoted to the ground game, much like San Francisco is, being able to spread the ball around to even a small scat back, which is what Jermichael Hasty is. He's what, 5'7", 5'8"? And for him to get 3 carries, Guerendo only get 1 and nothing for Taylor. This is a fundamental mistake, in my opinion, especially in a game when you're up and you were handily up until the end of the beginning of the second quarter. And we'll get into that momentarily, where they could have saved some wear and tear, or saved at least 3 or 4 carries, 3 or 4 fewer carries for Mason. Because again, when you think about it, if a running back like Mason or McCaffrey, 3 or 4 less carries a game could mean around 50 less carries for the season. That's significant. But the O-line, let's talk about the O-line again. 148 yards for the game, right around their average for the year, a little over their average for the year. The O-line only let up 6 pressures and just 1 sack. And that sack was because Brock was running around for literally 9 seconds trying to find someone to throw the ball to, which, as I've said in previous podcasts, I respect, and it's completely commendable. But at some point during those 9 seconds, it's okay to take off. It's okay to check down. It's okay to throw it away. He got down. He ducked it. It's not like he took some sort of monstrous hit on that sack, but it's okay to live to play another down, because at some point that dancing around, right, is going to catch up with him. Someone's going to get him from the backside, sack, fumble, scoop and score, God forbid, injury. When you're dancing around that much, and he has a very good feel for the pocket and pressure. It's been obvious in the past, 25 plus games that he's played, but it feels like tempting fate at this point, right? When you can get rid of the ball, release it, or just decide after 4 or 5 seconds, like, all right, I'm just going to take off, right? I'm just going to take off, try to pick up 2, 3, 4 more yards, slide, and let's get to 2nd and 6, 2nd and 7. But of those 6 pressures, 4 was on left guard Aaron Banks. He had a difficult game. Well, I mean, not difficult, but in comparison to other linemen. 1 was on Colton McKivitz, 1 was on Jordan Mason. Otherwise, Trent Williams, Jake Brendel, and Dominic Pooney had a clean game, clean stat line. Per Pro Football Focus, the Niners through 4 weeks are the number 2 run blocking team. Makes sense given the output. The 20th team in pass block efficiency. And probably a little bit worse than that if you want to factor in how much Brock was scrambling around since week 1, buying time, getting out of would-be sacks and would-be pressures to keep plays alive. So room for improvement on the offensive line. 3rd downs, though, played really well. And 3rd downs, offensively, not nearly as big of an issue as on the defensive side of the ball, but 7 out of 13, they converted to over 50%. That's always the goal. Special teams. Let's start with Jake Moody. Perfect. 3 out of 4 games, clean, perfect games. Good on his 3 field goals. 3 on his good on his 3 extra points. Excuse me. Isaac Guerendo, beginning of the second half, up 20-3, fumbles on a kick return, runs into the back of his own man, puts it on the ground. New England recovers. They score to make it 20-10 early in the second half. Then the Niners promptly went down to score to make it 27-10. Then when it was a 3-score game, it's essentially over. Punt returns. Jacob Cowing gets hurt. Kyle Juszczyk goes later in the second half, coming in to field punts. Now that's unfortunate. I think Cowing had a shoulder injury. The one thing I have to say about the punt return team is stop returning it inside the 10. Even Juice did this, or right around the 10. Get away from the ball. I mean, the way they're returning it now, you return it at the 10-yard line. They're not getting more than 4 or 5 yards anyway, right? So the chances of the ball bouncing forward into the end zone is pretty decent. Could obviously sideways. It could just die. It could bounce upfield, and you could maybe gain more yardage than you would have via a return. But field awareness, more so Cowing. I mean, Juice just coming in, and he didn't care where he was. He just wanted to field it cleanly. But since the start of the season, they are fielding way too many balls inside the 10. There's no need for it. The way the special teams unit, and more so the punt unit than the field goal unit and kick returns, aren't as much an issue anymore because Moody is just kicking into the end zone and teams are taking it at the 30. And I hope next year, even though the NFL seems like they want to legislate kick returns out of the game altogether, something has to change on kickoff returns. Either touchbacks come out to the 25, or you're moving the kickoff back from the 35 to the 30 to, and I don't think they would do that. I think they would maybe move the, if it goes into the end zone, the starting field position from the 30 to the 25. Remember, it used to be the 20. This seems so excessive that you're giving the team, every offensive team that starts, another 10 yards right off the jump. And I know the NFL is pushing more offense, but I think that should be secondarily in terms of special teams, and you should worry about the safety of a kick return. And I feel like the new special teams alignment is probably going to be here to stay. It's on a 1-year trial, but I don't think it's going anywhere. But I think even if you're bombing, and a lot of teams are bombing kicks deep into the end zone or out of the end zone, it's non-returnable. But I don't think teams have to start at the 30, right? It just feels like you're doing too much to help the offense when everything else is helping the offense already. You're protecting the quarterback, defensive calls, etc. It's offensively skewed already. I don't think you need to help with starting field position at the 30. This is just an N of one opinion. Sorry that I go off on that tangent. So punt returns, let's stop returning inside or near the 10. Just let it bounce. Get away from it. And as predicted by this guy, the 49ers were in punt safe all game. Down in distance, position on the field did not matter. They were in punt safe every single punt. You are welcome. I don't think they heard me. They certainly don't listen to this podcast, and I said it a bit sarcastically, tongue in cheek, but I'll take it. They don't have a good punt return unit with standard returns. Might as well line up safe. Don't give any team any thought about potentially going for it. Now if it was like 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, how much a punt safe is really going to affect a direct snap, I don't know. But at least it dissuades teams, and I don't think it does anything negative to impact their already bad punt return unit. So let's transition away from that game. Closing thoughts on the game. Can't get too high. They control the game from the jump. You want to nitpick stuff. Red zone offense needs to be better, especially when you're going to be playing against better teams and a better offensive team this week in the Arizona Cardinals. You found a closer, though, right? I mean, Nick Bosa is your closer, but when it was 30-13 and the Patriots were driving their last drive of the game, Bosa gets in there for the strip sack and recovery. Close the door, and there was never going to be a comeback, but close the door on that drive. And that's something that San Francisco has been hoping for the first 3 weeks. Running game looked good against a team that historically going into the game was only allowing about 87 yards per game on the ground. Niners went 60 beyond that. And played well in the pass game, both offensively and defensively. How much and how high you want to get over that game? Listen, the spread was 10.5. They beat them by 17. They got up 20-0. They did have a special teams gaffe to start the second half. got the ball right back, went right down the field to make it 27-10. So the Niners were in firm control throughout. If they had broken this into a 37-13 or 44 or 40-13 type of game, I think we'd probably feel a little bit better and say that was a San Francisco dominant performance that we all wanted to see. It is a step in the right direction. It was a better than good enough performance to clamp down and beat a team that they absolutely should have clamped down and beaten, which they did. Let's turn our attention now to Christian McCaffrey and learning yesterday that his Achilles injury is a bilateral Achilles injury, which means he has it in both legs. Now, this was mentioned this past Friday, I believe by Matt Maiocco or by John Lynch or both, and no one really picked up on it because I think a lot of people thought, and I didn't pick up on it, I didn't even hear or recall the term bilateral on Friday or going into the weekend. It just became more prominent on Monday, yesterday. Just thought bilateral meant something about maybe horizontally across the Achilles or something. Not that the Achilles was split, but talking about an area or a line point on the Achilles where the inflammation is. But it actually means in both of his Achilles tendons. And Kyle Shanahan came out yesterday in his Monday press conference and admitted he's had it in both. He hasn't said for how long. Could have been just since the season started. Could have been training camp. Hopefully it wasn't before training camp started, because if that was the case, then them not, the medical staff not putting McCaffrey on ice for the whole month of August and part of July would have been a medical fail, but has admitted it's not something new. But as it stands currently, he's bothered more by one leg than the other, and he's not saying which, nor should he. Got treatment in Germany, whether it was stem cell injections or any sort of rich platelet type of thing. Nobody knows what he got. Shanahan has said he hasn't even talked to McCaffrey about what happened in Germany, which you have to assume is a lie, because there's no way one of your top players, you wouldn't figure out what the hell happened. You wouldn't have your medical team getting the reports and faxes. It's 2024. No one does fax anymore, but any sort of digital reports on what was done to him by a by a physician not with the team, by a physician not in the country. Not like that matters a ton, but I'll just throw that out there for emphasis. John, York, Kyle, the medical staff, they all know. They all know what's going on. They're just not saying, and that's okay. When should he return? Well, Kyle did say we're going to, in the coming weeks, we're going to start to, get him back to practice and be mindful in how we ramp up his activity. So he's eligible, obviously, to come off of IR this upcoming week, but it's not going to happen, nor should it. So they have Arizona, then a Thursday game at Seattle, then home for the Chiefs, who are an injury-riddled mess as well, with Rashee Rice. I believe it was confirmed that he tore his ACL. And then at home Sunday night for Dallas before the bye week. Now, I think everything being equal, if they can go 4-4 heading into the bye, I'd feel pretty good, because no matter how, Seattle looked good, 3-0 first 3 weeks of the season. Meanwhile, it was against Bo Nix and the Broncos, a Tua-less Miami Dolphin team, and I forget the team they played in between there, but they go to Detroit and get absolutely drubbed. Now, that the pass offense for Seattle looked pretty good. I'm assuming this is a game that the 49ers can win against Arizona. We're going to get there. If the Niners can get the 3-2, Seattle, I believe, has the Giants this week. They should, at home, they should win that game. So the Thursday night game in Seattle is for first place in the NFC West. But should the Niners drop that, if they can split between the Chiefs and the Cowboys, I'm not being greedy. I'm not going to say, their Chiefs are injured. They got Dallas's number. They'll beat Arizona, and Seattle and Geno Smith can't do anything against the Niners. They'll be 6-2 going into the bye. I'm a little more conservative. I think 5-3 would be great, but I think 4-4 might be where they are. Maybe they beat Arizona, struggle in Seattle, and split between Kansas City and Dallas. That doesn't make me less of a fan, or, I'm not a homer. That's the one thing I'm not a homer, and I'm probably more glass half empty and a bit more cautious than some other people. So there's no reason for him to return before the bye. After the bye, we're getting into November. We're in November after the bye. So sometime, mid-November. They're at Tampa the first game, and I believe they're home after that. So maybe that first home game is when he comes back. So we're looking at I would think, right, a mid-November return. Let's go a step further and talk about when McCaffrey returns, how should he return? And I'm going to vote for McCaffrey comes in as the third down back. Unless something happens to Jordan Mason or the production plummets in the next 5 games, so the next 4 plus coming out of the bye at Tampa that first weekend in November, McCaffrey should not, I don't care if he's cleared. I don't care if Jesus Christ comes down and blesses his Achilles and says, these are the best Achilles on the planet now. He should not, most healthy, strongest, whatever. He should not become the featured back. They should, if they're easing him back into practice, I think it's logical to ease him back into his workload. Now, that potentially, if he's a third down back, then it tips the hand that in some ways, whenever McCaffrey comes in, and most third downs, unless it's 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2, are passing downs anyway, but let them stop him. He's the reigning offensive, player of the year. He is a threat as a check down or running patterns. He does not need to come back and have 20 carries. He does not need to come back and have 15 carries. The first game, I don't think McCaffrey should have more than 10 carries. Regardless of how well he's cleared and blessed and everything, like, oh, you're good to go. Jordan Mason and Kyle's, bullshitting through season. Oh, we knew what Jordan Mason was capable of the minute he got in here. Then why the hell would you not put him in over Eli Mitchell? Why the hell did you not give him carries anytime last year, even though he was outperforming Eli Mitchell, and it was just McCaffrey. This is how you run players into the ground. I mean, your receivers play about 80 snaps per game. McCaffrey's probably at 90 or 95. You could even that out. This should be the use case or the test case for, look at what happened when McCaffrey was out. Look how good Mason is. Look at what he can shoulder. Again, assuming the next 4 weeks, everything stays as we've seen and there's no injuries or anything like that. I'm not saying when, maybe 3 or 4 weeks into McCaffrey being back that they split carries, 12, 15, whatever it may be. No. But going into it, you have the proof now that Mason can handle every aspect, carrying it 20 times, receptions out of the backfield, and pass protection. So it doesn't have to be so McCaffrey-centric. He can re-injure his Achilles or any part of his body on any carry. It could be the 4th snap that he comes back, just like we saw Aaron Rodgers, right? But the quantity, the wear and tear, it builds over time, especially now that you're dealing with a chronic condition like an inflammation in the Achilles tendon. And I'll conclude the McCaffrey section saying, does the restructure now look bad? And I went back and he had no guaranteed money this year and next year. He had $12 million in base salary, which, meant he had a $12 million cap hit in 2024 this year and next year in 2025. The extension did lower his cap hit this year to about $7 million. Next year, it's about $9.5 million. And then in 2026 or 7, it becomes really bad. I think in 2026, it's even like $11.5 million, which isn't terrible. So on the cap, they saved money, but they did give him a raise, right? I think $3 million a year more, technically, raise. And more money out of Jed York's, wallet or money bin, whatever it is. And that I don't so much, care about. But I wonder if McCaffrey knew about his leg situation, asking for the restructure. I wonder if the 49ers knew about the lower leg situation when going through the restructure. He deserved the restructure, much like Trent Williams did. I just don't believe in adding as much new money on as they did. Again, McCaffrey was at the top of the running back market. $16 million annually. They pushed it another 20% higher. They gave him a $3 million a year raise. And Trent Williams, being 36 years old, seeing how the tackle market evolved, got more money, and God bless everybody that gets, what they're looking for. Ayuk, McCaffrey, Williams, and whoever else out there in athletics or life. But it felt like the new money stuff, especially for McCaffrey, did not need to happen. Didn't affect the cap. It helped the cap. So all good. But in 2027, I think his cap hit is $27 million, and he might not be on the team, or they restructure it again, and he's purely a third down back like a Jerick McKinnon. We got a couple years to get there, but just wanted to have a brief talking point about, how does the contract look now? Injuries quickly. So the following players are day-to-day. Chris Conley, day-to-day with an oblique. Jacob Cowing with his shoulder. D-tackle Jordan Elliott with his knee. Kyle Juszczyk, shoulder. George Kittle, ribs. And Fred Warner, ankle. I think there's a pretty good chance that, most, if not all, players will suit up against Arizona. Potential defensive tackle reinforcements incoming. Kalia Davis. Per Kyle yesterday on Monday thinks that there's a really good chance that they can open up Kalia Davis's practice window this Wednesday, so October 2nd. Davis has been on IR since August 27th. Even if they don't once they open the window, they have 21 days to either activate Kalia Davis or put him on season-ending IR. If they don't activate it this week, doesn't mean anything. Just means maybe he's not quite ready yet. Maybe they open it next week. Even though it's a short week against Seattle, he probably wouldn't see the field. But again, still has 21 days. I don't know how the bye week kind of works into that. As long as he's on the active roster, it doesn't matter if they have a game or not. He should be okay. What's interesting about now having players coming back, with Kalia Davis being probably the soonest to return, the 49ers only have 51 men on their 53-man roster. So those two open spots are probably going to go to Kalia Davis, whether it's 2 games from now, 3 games from now, whenever he's ready, and then Ricky Pearsall. And again, I still think, I don't know, even when he starts practicing, how ready he's going to be if Jacob Cowing doesn't get snaps, and it was only 5 until week 4, and he was with the team, got playing time in each one of the preseason games, getting into the playbook. And Kyle said he just wasn't ready yet. Now, Ricky Pearsall might be a smarter player than him, might take more quickly to the playbook. I don't know if they want to rush him out on the field as a first-round pick, especially with the way Jennings is playing. They want to get Ayuk more up to speed, and Debo is such a multidimensional threat that the logjam in front of him, plus the Cowing factor of not being ready yet. And how could you be ready if you're Ricky Pearsall if you haven't played meaningful snaps or had meaningful snaps in practice yet for the past literally 2 months or close to it? I think we're farther away from seeing Ricky Pearsall than we want to be, right? We want to see, a first round pick out there and contributing. So it's Davis and Pearsall, but then you still have John Feliciano. So if Davis and Pearsall come back and are part of the active roster before Feliciano comes back, now Feliciano's ready. Who do you release? Feliciano will be the 10th person on the O-line, probably an O-lineman. Then you have McCaffrey. You got to release someone there. My vote would be Ronnie Bell, because then they would have 7 receivers, and you don't need, or maybe they would have 6 with, including Pearsall. I'd have to go back and just check. But if Pearsall comes back, it makes Ronnie Bell expendable. Then you have Greenlaw. Greenlaw comes back. Do you release? Do you release someone like Tatum Bethune and hope you can get him to the practice squad? Do you release someone like Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles? I don't know if he has enough time accrued where he doesn't go through waivers. You could just stash him on the practice squad. Could be another position, could be a corner. They have 6 corners. The Niners are going to have to make decisions once Davis and Pearsall are back on the roster, because they have no more room for Feliciano, McCaffrey, or Greenlaw. So they'll have to make some decisions. So let's transition now from looking back and some news and notes to San Francisco hosting the Cardinals, 4:05 Eastern. Tom Brady on the call. Niners a 7.5-point favorite. Let's talk a little bit about Arizona. This season lost a game that they were ahead for a lot of the game at Buffalo week 1. Then they come back home, beat the Rams handily 41-10. Then they hosted the Lions, lost that game by 7, and then hosted Washington. So they were on a 3-game homestand, lost to the Commanders 42-14. Kyler Murray has been efficient so far this season. 6 touchdowns and 1 interception through 4 games, completing 69% of his passes. He's averaging less than 200 yards per game through the air, but does have 40 rushing yards per game on the ground to add to that. And the rushing team is a top 5 rushing offense, led by James Conner, 74 yards per game, a 4.6 average, and he does have 3 rushing touchdowns. The receivers are led by Marvin Harrison Jr., has looked every bit as good as advertised, 15 receptions for 243 yards and 4 touchdowns. The 2 other receivers being Michael Wilson, who has gone 14 for 138 and 1 score, and Greg Dortch, 15 for 131. Trey McBride, the tight end, was out against Washington. He sustained a concussion against the Lions, I believe, and he was out against the Commanders, but in the 3 games he played, 14 receptions for 122 yards. On defense, linebacker Dennis Gardeck leads the team with 3 sacks, and the secondary is led by cornerback Sean Murphy-Bunting and free safety Budda Baker. Offensively, a bit of a middle of a road unit. The Cardinals are 12th in total offense, 25th passing, 5th rushing. They're averaging 153 yards per game, and 13th in points scored, averaging 24 per game. Defensively, where they could be had, they are 25th in overall defense, allowing 355 yards per game, 18th against the pass, allowing 208, 28th against the run, allowing 146, which is right around where the Niners are in a per game average, and they were allowing 26.5 points per game. That's bottom 10. So now 49er keys to win this game defensively. Will they bring the same commitment and intensity to stopping the run, to stopping specifically James Conner? Stopping Kyler Murray is a different animal. And we're going to get into that, how they're going to rush Murray, how they should rush Murray, and mobile quarterbacks have given San Francisco fits. And we'll see what Nick Sorensen and Brandon Staley have dialed up to continue to slow down an offense that, 12th overall, not super explosive, but the duo of Murray and Conner can be an ongoing headache for San Francisco if they don't play disciplined run defense, maintain gap discipline, and don't rush out of control and let Murray get outside the defensive line's rush lanes. Passing wise, McBride was a big loss against the Commanders. They still wouldn't have won that game. They got handled easily, but who's going to be covering McBride? I mean, Campbell showed that he couldn't cover backup tight ends against the Rams. I don't think Warner's going to draw him, one-on-one, and McBride is questionable with a concussion. He's tracking to play, and he's a big weapon for them. Really, really big weapon for Kyler Murray and what that offense wants to do, at least through the air. How the Niners will defend him, do they bring a safety down? Do they have someone like Hufanga or Jair Brown on him? Both cases, those defenders are giving up, height and size. In Hufanga's case, speed, giving up some speed to McBride. But when it comes to receivers, it's the Marvin Harrison Jr. show. Will Charvarius Ward shadow him? Now, I wouldn't feel awful if Demo draws him in coverage, but I would feel awkward or bad if Isaac Yiadom draws him in coverage, if Yiadom does get a significant amount of snaps on the outside. And Renardo Green's a rookie. I mean, rookie, you could say rookie on rookie, but Harrison knows where he's going. Green doesn't, right? So the offensive player always has the advantage. But I'm curious if at any point this season, Ward gets to draw the number 1 receiver almost exclusively, regardless of where they line up. And when it comes to Kyler Murray, are they going to play rush container? Or are they going to play pressure? Are they going to blitz again 33% of the time like they did against New England? Yes, it was New England, bad offense, bad offensive line, but a savvy veteran quarterback who at times had no time and just, the pocket collapsed. Others, he couldn't maybe get off of his second or third progression and get rid of the ball. But it wasn't the front four, generally, solely the front four, that was causing Jacoby Brissett into those mistakes. So are they going to come at Kyler Murray or say, hey, we're going to keep you in the pocket? And Murray's going to get some. He'll probably get around his average of 40 yards, right? If Kyler Murray gets 70 to 80 yards, the Niners are in trouble on the ground, right? Big plays, wide open, gaping holes on the D-line. But the offensive core, Harrison Jr. is a good one, is going to be a really good receiver. McBride's a top 5, top 7 tight end. But with Wilson and Dortch and Connors, not a huge threat out of the backfield. Do they just pin their ears back with 4, 5, 6 and come after Murray and say, hey, passing game that's averaging less than 200 yards a game, beat us? If they can make the Cardinals one-dimensional by not taking away Connor, but limiting Connor and the traditional running game, then they have a really good shot at doing that. But how much time do you want to give Murray? And of course, you could send 5 or 6, doesn't guarantee anything. He could dance away from that. Brock does. Although teams are dropping, 7 and 8, sometimes 9 into coverage more against Brock than they are probably against mobile quarterbacks like a Murray and Allen, a Jackson, Hurts. But is it going to be bend but don't break and trust your 7 against the Cardinals' skill players and hope you can make a play on Murray in the pocket more often than not when you're front four? Or do they press the issue and make Kyler Murray make good decisions consistently? 69% completion percentage, and he's seen obviously his fair share of man, zone, blitz, defensive fronts and backfields being multiple. He's seen it not only this year, but throughout the course of his career. But he's having obviously a very good start to this year. I'm curious if the Niners force the issue at all with Murray, more so than maybe they have in the past. And on offense, play efficient through the air. That's Brock Purdy's game, but don't get greedy. He got greedy to Kittle on that pick. It's a ball that I don't think he should have thrown. Kittle, bailed him out. They're going to be able to pass against Arizona, right? They're giving up 355 yards a game. They're better against the pass than the run. So they should be able to do whatever they want against Arizona. They should be able to run for about a $140, give or take. Brock should be able to, pass for 250 plus. And he should be able to score, 24, 27 plus on Arizona. Don't get greedy, be patient, and take the checkdowns. I know McCaffrey isn't there. And, there were more checkdowns to a Juice or a Kittle than there really was to, Mason as a running back. And Mason stayed in a good amount in terms of pass protection and acquitted himself really well. But it does feel like there isn't the comfort level with the running backs yet. And nor should there be. But utilizing, we're just going to say Mason right now as more of an outlet, or if it is Debo, lining up in the backfield a handful of times, or God forbid Guerrero, and Taylor's not going to see any playing time, but checkdowns are okay. Feed the running game and feed it beyond just Mason. I'm sure Mason's going to get around 20 carries. Debo might get around 5. Can Guerrero get 5? Brock Purdy, Purdy may have a couple scrambles, 2, 3, or 4. So they're going to get to like the low 30s. Unless Arizona just comes, guns blazing and just, scores touchdowns on every possession and the Niners find themselves down, 2 or 3 scores, then you could see maybe them abandoning the run a bit. But, feed the running game. It's what Arizona struggles with. They're not a good defense across the board. But the Niners have evolved into a power running game. So feed Mason and feed Guerrero a bit too. Go back to that Rams game plan where Guerrero gets 5 carries, not 1 carry and done. I don't recall if his 1 carry came before or after the special teams fumble. But I do know Guerrero was yanked after that because Debo was back returning kicks with Patrick Taylor after that happened. But get to your, 35 number. You may not need 35 runs to beat Arizona, but get to it. And keeping Brock under 30 passes is the recipe for success. And lastly, this isn't a key to win, but just something that, I think at least I want to see. Brock should have the mentality of taking off sooner. This buying time, 6, 7, 8, 9 seconds, it looks fun and it makes for a fun highlight play. But as I said earlier, they're tempting fate, right? At some point, he's going to hit on the backside. At some point, the ball's going to come out, or he might try to do too much and throw an errant pass. I applaud the commitment to keeping the play alive and keeping your eyes downfield and wanting to get the ball into your playmaker's hands. But if something's there on a 1st and 10 or 2nd and 10, 2nd and 6, you can get 3 or 4 yards, take it. I am not condoning or saying that Brock should be a 1st or 2nd read quarterback and go. He goes through his progressions, 3, 4, 5, whatever it may be on a given play. And he keeps it alive and it's scramble drill. And again, it looks fun and he's had a lot of success with it. But Brock was touting his 10-yard split, being faster than McCaffrey's and Debo's. And he is, it's not a sustainable, like he's not a 4.5 40 guy. And he's probably not even, I don't even know if he's a 4.6 40 guy, but pick up those yards sooner. It's another element of the game. And I'm not asking him to run it 10 times. 5, if it's there 5 times, 5, 6 times, take it. He's still going to dance, but I think there could be, if you can cut down on the dancing half as much and just break that pocket and put more of a strain on the defense with his legs, it just adds another element to the offense that teams need to account for. Now, let's go into the prediction. I'm a little bit more cautious against this Arizona team. Like everything, I said last podcast, I'm not going to pick a blowout until I see a blowout. Do we want to call the Patriot game a 17-point win a blowout? I don't know if there's an agreed upon margin of victory that defines blowout, but it was a good, solid win against a team that they should have had a good, solid win against. I'm not looking at this game, I'm not going to say that the Niners can control what Kyler Murray does on the ground. And the Commanders stomped them, right? 42-14, stomped them. It doesn't carry. It's a week-to-week league. I don't think there's really going to be any carryover. Glad that they got the Cardinals here, then at home, just for whatever Levi's, home field advantage is going to give to get the Niners above 500 and keep within a game of Seattle. But I think Murray, Harrison, McBride, I think the Niners defense comes back down to earth a little bit. There's no way that they're going to hold the Cardinals to 216 yards of offense like they did in New England, right? There's no way. This is an offense that's averaging about 350 yards a game. If they can keep the Cardinals closer to 300 than 350, keep Kyler Murray, who's averaging less than 200 yards per game, to his average, limit the explosives, limit the explosive runs, Connor or Murray, limit the explosive passes. Basically, it could be any of it. Harrison, Wilson, Dortch, McBride, and play just as efficiently and smartly on offense. And I think they walk away with a victory. But I'm going to go 27-20 San Francisco. Whether that means it's 27-17, 27-13, and the Cardinals get a late score to make it a one-score game, but the Niners, salt the clock away. I don't know. I don't care. I'm not the line is 7.5. I'm not betting this game either straight up or with the spread. But until I see this, it was one game, guys, right against New England. Until I see the consistency in defensive effort and performance and pressure and doing the things that this team needs to do. So the names on the back of the jersey match the production holistically that we're going to see watching the game or on a stat sheet afterwards. Then I'll start getting maybe a little bit more brazen in my, predictions from a point differential standpoint. And Arizona's 1-3. They're 1-3 for a reason. They are a 1-win team through the first quarter of the season. I don't think they're going to be a 4-win team overall. They're probably a 6 or 7-win team. maybe closer to 6. But I want to see, this is the first time now the Niners are going to be going up against a mobile quarterback with a new coordinator. Same philosophy with wrinkles, but a new coordinator. And I'm curious to see what Sorensen does to limit the Kyler Murray damage. But 27-20, San Francisco gets the win and hopefully gets to 3-2, leading up to their Thursday night game at Seattle. So that's going to conclude the 49ers podcast for today and this week. I'm unable to do a podcast later in the week, but we will pick up again on Monday, and it might just be a one podcast leading into the Thursday night game. It might be a podcast on Tuesday, could be Monday, unsure, but then we'll obviously have a recap podcast, a recap of that Seahawks game, probably on Friday, Saturday at the latest. So only podcast this week, but like always, one podcast or two, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. Dual Monday night games on last night. Horrible Titans and Dolphins. Good to see the Seahawks get knocked off. And let's not forget baseball playoffs starting. And being a Mets fan in the Northeast, it was great to see them not choke it away, although they do start their series today against Milwaukee, who they struggled with second to last series of the season. So baseball playoffs, for however much I watch, who knows? If you do, enjoy the football, the college football, anything else that is going on. And like always, between now and when we speak again, be happy, be healthy, be safe, and we'll talk soon. Take care.